Youngstown Penguin Football Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Sal Guardo. With me, as always, is former defensive lineman Kyle Searle, former football director of football operations Dan Cobb, and Hall of Fame quarterback Kurt Hess. As always, please follow us on Instagram, Whitetown Penguin Podcast. We are live on YouTube Live. Please give us a subscribe and a like. And we are anywhere podcasts are available. Please give us a 5-star review. All that out of the way, let's get into it. Penguins lose, but it was I don't want to call it a quality loss. We don't believe in those, but the Penguins did look a lot better than they had in the past. However, the Penguins lose 27-17 to South Dakota Coyotes at the Ice Castle. We will get into that, recap all the games in Week 8, get you ready for North Dakota, who is also coming to the Ice Castle, and then we will give you our Week 9 picks. We'll get into all that and more, but first, over to Kyle Searle.
Thanks, Sal. So once again, the show is brought to you by the Leiden Oil Company, leading Penguin supporters in the Valley on and off the field for over 100 years. So Paul, Laura, Paul Jr., Jen, we give you a big thank you. Once again, Paul is fueling the best for success.
Thank you, Searle. Well, let's transition. Let's get straight into South Dakota. Is that cool?
Do it.
Let's do it, boys. Recapping the game. Penguins came out on fire. Opening drive, the Penguins take it down 82 yards and finish it off with a 15-yard pass. Penguins up 7-0. Penguins stop, get the ball back. Another beautiful 81-yard drive. Ends with a Bo Brungard 11-yard run. Penguins up 14-0. At this point in time, things are looking great. South Dakota then answers with a touchdown of their own with a 48-yard pass. Another touchdown with a 21-yard run. We're tied up 14-14. Then at the very end, Penguins had the ball at the end of the half. We'll elaborate on this more. Kick the field goal. It's good. Penalty, though, gives us a first down. What do? We take the penalty. We take the first down. Things get scary. Long story short, we end up kicking a field goal anyway than the half, and I believe hit the crossbar, if I remember correctly. Very scary. That's your half. Penguins 17-14. Take the lead. Third quarter, South Dakota with a field goal ties it up 17 even. Then they score a touchdown that was an 50-yard run, making it 24-17. Then to seal the fate, they kick a field goal for 35 yards out in the fourth quarter, making it 27-17. Penguins shut out in the second half is the difference. Very interesting at the end as we were down 10. Doug Phillips lines up for that field goal. I get the purpose of it, but we'll get into all that as what happened in the end of the half, what happened in the game, and Coach Phillips' strategy to try to get us back into that one. As we all know, we missed a field goal and that ended the game. But thoughts, I'm going to pass it over to Kurt, what you thought about that offense and what you thought about that scary end of that first half.
Yeah, definitely an interesting end to the first half. I'll get into that in just a little bit. But offensively, when you're going to upset a team that is a top 5 team nationally in the FCS, you have to play 4 quarters. Offensively for us, this was a good, bad, and ugly game, right? I mean, we had some good. We saw 2 quarters of really quality football. It looked like Bo was using a lot of play action to get outside on the edge, distributing the ball to playmakers, keeping ourselves in third and manageable, staying ahead of the chains. Great 2 drives. And then I don't know if South Dakota was just able to adjust to us or we weren't able to just sustain those drives. And then you saw what happened in the second half, which is kind of the bad, right? Inability to sustain drives. The one long drive that we did have, missed a field goal there. 2 missed field goals. That's a special teams issue, but that's an opportunity for us to score points. So first half was good. Second half was bad. The ugly is now we're sitting here with 6 losses and we're out of the playoffs. And I think we held to a 1/100% chance of us making the playoffs, making a run at 7-5, hoping things would fall our way. The ugly is we have yet to play 4 quarters offensively of high quality football. And even though we're playing at home against the top 5 FCS team if you are going to upset anybody and beat a good team, you have to play 4 quarters of football. Not perfect, but, in all 3 facets of the game. And we did not do that specifically offensively. So to get blanked in the second half is really glaring to me. I do give some credit to South Dakota, because South Dakota traveling to Youngstown, Ohio, they have everything to lose. We had nothing to lose. They fell behind 14-0. So you got to give a lot of credit to that defense for buckling down the second half, for that coaching staff making adjustments. That's a good win. It may not look great on paper to win by 10, but to go into a different environment, get down early, the ability to respond should be something that Sal notes in a good football team, right? A good football team that's willing to make a run right there, goes onto the road and they win ugly, right? Heading into a big matchup. At the end of the half, about 1:10 left, we got the ball back on a fumble. It seemed from a coaching staff perspective like we were okay to run out the clock and kick the field goal. Lastafka has been great for us, and I don't discredit the coaches for making that call. We ran the ball, we ran the clock down. You didn't want to give it back to a quarterback that can make some plays in the passing game, which of course their quarterback can do. So I get that, but then we're given the gift of a running into the kicker on a 3rd and 4 or 4th and 4. Now all of a sudden we have a free first down, and there's about 20 to 28 seconds left. And then we ran speed option. So I think that there was just indecision from the coaching staff at that perspective. Like, hey, our goal was to run out the clock, but then we were given a gift to, hey, let's take a shot or 2 at the end zone. And so I thought it was funny that we never took that chance. I don't think that that's the decision that the kids go into the locker room thinking, oh, we're kind of playing not to lose. But it's easy for us to sit here today and say, hey, we got to be aggressive at that point. We've been given a gift. We're at home. Let's take 1 or 2 shots into the end zone. I don't remember our timeout. I think we may have 1 timeout. But you could tell from early on that it was okay for us to run out the clock. We end up making the field goal anyway. So probably would have been fine either way. It was just kind of a strange 28 seconds that it felt like we could kind of take some advantage of, and we didn't. But we did go into the half with the lead. So you can't really, discredit the coaches too much, because we did have a 3-point lead against the number 4 team in the nation heading in. We got blanked offensively in the second half. And that's what it comes down to.
And then one key thing I think you said at the end of that first half is that we ran out the clock, because after thinking about it and chewing on it, if we accepted that first field goal or they ran into the kicker, South Dakota could have easily gone down the field and kicked the field goal right back at us. Knowing
given
that
up a lot of big plays, right? We've given up a lot of big plays, and you guys know
so that was in our
favor.
favor.
It takes 2 plays to get down the field. Next thing you know, the momentum shifts big times if they kick a field goal. Now we're going in, instead of with the lead, we're at a tie ball game or potentially losing. So
exactly. I think it was like a minute 30 or something. We would have given the ball back. I was like, dude. Anyway,
well, and up to that point, we had played a great first half offensively. We had great long drives. We were scoring. We were getting into the end zone. Let's not hurt our guys by making a mistake right here or throwing an interception. And for Bo's mentality and offensive psyche, if you throw, take a risk or something, what happens if Bo throws an interception trying to take that risk? Next thing you know, that kind of you're taking an interception into the locker room with you. That can be hard to get out of your head.
Yeah. Cyril, defense, what do you think, man? Or just overall? I know you have a lot of thoughts.
Oh, overall, I got a lot of defensive thoughts. And overall, I just thought, the offense struggling.
This is the co-star of the South Dakota podcast as well. He does that as a side gig. But go ahead.
The Back the Pack podcast. Shout out to those guys for letting me jump on with them last Thursday. But, the game, was – back and forth, and those guys had an emergency podcast at halftime. Like we were making them a little nervous. So, but overall, I just think the lack of points in the second half, we just, that's just a consistency thing. That's just a growing thing. You would like to think that we're making those adjustments at halftime to continue the success that we had in the first half. Overall, I think this is a game where you could finally take away the film, right? It's not a 50 or a 60-point loss to Pitt and South Dakota State. We can take this film and really grow from it, because, this I think it's going to be the turning point of the season and for the future of who's going to be on this roster next year. This will be the game that'll be hey, we're almost there. We're not there yet. We're almost there. And to your point, Sal, are we through the toughest stretch of the season? I don't know. South Dakota's last 3 games were against Southern Illinois, who's currently ranked 17, and they won 42-13. Then they go on they play Murray State. They beat them 59-0. They're playing Northern Iowa, and they beat them 42-17. I would like to think that this YSU football team is better than those 3 teams. And, we would love to say like the transitive property is, applies to football, but just because South Dakota blew these teams out and, we were in a close game with them, it doesn't quite work like that. So we got a tough task that we're going to talk about, in the next segment, but I think the defense finally looked aggressive, man. I'm going to shout out DeJuan Martin and Nehemiah Dukes. I think it was Nehemiah who got a sack early in the game and, just freaking kicked in the door, celebrating. And that's what I want to see. I don't know if it's these boys were hyped up to play under the lights, because we got to be hyped up to play at noon, to play at 2. But, night games in the Castle are special. So it was good to see them come out fast and aggressive. I would like to see that transition into the second half there. And, ultimately, we're still giving up explosive plays. It's Aiden Bauman, by the way, the back-to-pack boys, helped me pronounce that last week. Threw a 48-yard bomb for a touchdown. Then you had a 21-yard run by Charles Pierre Jr. and another 50-yard run by Charles Pierre Jr. So, we got to clean up explosive plays and really limit those, because it sucks when you're playing good defense and you're stopping them for 2-3 yard, gains. And then boom, it doesn't essentially matter because they're getting these huge chunk plays. So clean that up a little bit. And I do want to shout out the huge strip sack by DeJuan Martin going into halftime, and the recover by Jalen Kreider. All right. Like those plays on defense, those plays are what win Missouri Valley football games. And I know we did not get the win, but our plays like that, when we find our consistency and we find our aggression, that will win us close games. And ultimately, that play right there in half, at the end of the first half, gave us the lead going into half. And that is ultimately, what had South Dakota fans, kind of in a, oh no, like what are, what's happening here? Like what's going to do? We need an emergency podcast type deal. So ultimately, like I'm a little less emotionally charged than I was last week. I still think that we have a long way to go to get to the level of South Dakota State and North Dakota State. I think we are not far off from being a number 3 or number 4 team in this conference to compete with everyone else. Like, we're still young, we're still learning. But I saw growth this week. I saw aggression. I saw some excitement. I saw a little bit of hustle. So I was just I don't know. I can't think. My CT just kicked in, but I just think it's good going forward into the season. We got another big game this week, so let's get on to it.
Well, Joe, before I move on to Dan, real quick, as our YouTube monitor, we have a celebrity in the YouTube chat making a comment. I don't know if you want to give him a shout out.
Bryce Oliver shouting out. South Dakota was way better last year. We did have a better team last year, Bryce, and we do have classic heart attack games with South Dakota. I would like to think that we could get back there. And ultimately, like to Sal's point, I will say this publicly. Privately, I retracted my freezing cold take Sal comment. He is leftover microwave, cold. You still got that hot plate, but it's still kind of a cold take. So you got
lukewarm
cold food on your plate. But yeah, it's like lukewarm, but the plate's really hot. So, I don't know. We're going to see how South Dakota fares against the Jackrabbits this week. So shout out to the Jackrabbits for blowing game day there, because we know how that feels ourselves. But
hey, shout out Bryce Oliver,
props.
Man.
Yeah,
shout
we
out
got
Bryce.
Bryce.
I mean,
shout out Bryce.
We gotta get you on the show,
D-Hop
man.
just got traded to the Chiefs. I know Bryce he's probably fighting for a spot now. Let's get him active roster, and let's see the Titans show him what he can do. If we got a quarterback down in Tennessee that can get him the ball, man, I don't want to speculate or anything, but I see D-Hop gets traded to the Chiefs. All of a sudden, we're hearing about Bryce Oliver. This is God in the works, huh? Let's go.
I mean,
Let's do it.
Nico popping in the chat saying South Dakota is overrated. Now, let's not take anything away from them, and let's focus on our boys. We're competitive this year, and in this last week, and they're getting better. And they took the number 4 ranked team in the country, regardless of if you think they're overrated or what the case may be. Our boys were in a game with them for about 3.5 quarters. All right. So that's the takeaway. And I think we just need to grow and build on that and take this momentum into next week.
Surso tame tonight.
Yeah, I know. I give my opinion.
I felt really just bad about the way that I was so charged up last week. I felt like I was on the roster last week, and I was feeling for this
3-13, so you
I know that. I feel for these seniors, man. This is let's be honest. We're not, a majority of us are not going to the NFL, and I just want. Yeah, and so I just kind of took a position. Last week I took a position of I don't see any sense of urgency from some guys to want to fix this thing, and I saw that this week. So I just wanted to address how I was coming at the team last week versus how I'm going to come at it this week.
Sir, I feel like every podcast show you act like you're a captain on the roster, so we get it, brother. We get it. Very passionate. Dan, what are your thoughts on the game overall? And take us through the strategy there at the end of the game, down 10. I think it was first or second down. We settled for the field goal. Thoughts? What do you think about all that?
Well, before that, we can all appreciate the Sledgehammer's passion in the sense that this team is the record is the record, but I think the fact that we came out, we were up 14-0, and after last week out in Brookings, I think that spoke a lot about the culture, and the team was prepared to play, right? I mean, we were up 14-0, and it wasn't like we struggled to move the football twice. We went right down the field. There was some, Kurt, you probably know or could speak to this better. There was some neat RPO stuff in there where Bo was kind of reading, throwing it right out there to those guys. That was a new wrinkle. I don't necessarily remember a lot of that in there. So that was cool to see that there was something we threw in there. So we were prepared. As we all said, the guys came out on fire, played hard, and you're sitting there at the end of the first quarter going, well, we're clicking now. We're doing the things we've been trying to do, moving the ball. The defense at times, as we all said, got stops. We hadn't seen that, So that first half was really – and not to say, but last week my key to the game was how would our defensive line perform against their quarterback? Because he stood back there. Our other quarterbacks have stood at times and just had a cup of coffee back there. So we got to him, as Kyle mentioned, a strip sack. So we caused a turnover. We had no turnovers. That I'm pretty sure I looked into that. We had no turnovers. I thought Bo got better again. In that first half, his ability to make some of those plays where they put him in those situations. And he made some plays with his feet. You guys might remember where he the guys had an angle on him, and he just was the better player on that play and got out of trouble, threw some balls on the run. I think he is just getting better and better. We're watching him get better. And I know, Kurt, I'm anxious. Maybe you could expand on that a little bit. But here is a guy who's now played 7 college football games, and he's showing signs of getting better. I still would like to see Tyshawn and Ethan in the game with Bo. If you guys watch, South Dakota did some of that 3-back set, and they were just leading with the one running back and giving it to what's his last name?
Pierre
Strong, right?
Strong.
Is that it?
Yeah,
Strong.
Pierre
I mean, and
Strong
he was
Jr. or
making
something.
those big runs, and I mean, there were some plays Ethan got in there, and he looked like the guy, we expect him to be. So that's one thing I still would like to see an extra little wrinkle there. But we all talked about it. Those big plays, we gave up the big run, the big pass. They just kind of take the air out of all that momentum we have. So we still got some work to do there. One other thing, how about our guy Kilpatrick, man? He's his net average is 45 point something per punt. He's second in the Valley. I mean, this guy's a weapon for us. So when we talk about special teams, Sal, as far as the point there at the end of the game, you know me, I'm not gonna. I don't know what the thought was. I'm not gonna question our coaching staff. I don't know whether they thought that there was something to do and try that. And you're talking at the end of the game, right? Is that what you said? Yeah. So maybe there was a thought to try that onside. I don't know. Time was limited. I mean, there might have been some things they were just thinking about there. And I didn't.
I liked it.
Yeah. I don't.
I've always seen it in games and thought, why don't they do that? And Phillips actually did it. So, obviously, you make that field goal, it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously they're in the heat of it. It's easy to sit back and think of other things, but I thought that our team was ready to play. And I think that's a big indicator. We talk about this. We've been talking about it for weeks. You go out to Brookings, and that's not the first time a South Dakota State team laid it on Youngstown State. So I think you got to let's move past that. But they put it on us. It's happened before. But we came out and had a 14-0 lead. And I thought that says so much about our coaching staff, so much about the culture he's building. I mean, we could have went out and it could have been the other way, right? We could be sitting here going, man, we obviously didn't get past the South Dakota State game, and we were down 21-0 in the first quarter. But as Kyle mentioned, they had an emergency podcast out there and for Vermillion because we had them on the ropes for a little bit. So those are my overall thoughts.
Well, real quick, if you're going to tell me that's the number 4 team in the country, again, you're telling me there's only 3 teams in the country that are better than that team we just saw. I mean, just looking at North Dakota, because that's who we got coming up next week, and looking at their schedule and their performance, North Dakota is I don't know how they're ranked behind the South Dakota team, and we'll see them on Saturday, but I'm not impressed. And I know I called that quarterback a yak guy on the pod, just being funny, but I'd say half his yards. I mean, that tight end screen from like the 5-yard line went to the 50. It was he made a couple passes, but I'd say almost half his stuff was yak. And this podcast had a 13.5-point spread. I know the South Dakota podcast show went on. It was like 19.5, maybe 20. Can't remember. Here in Florida on the Hard Rock app, Saturday morning, it was a 17.5 spread. At kickoff, it went all the way to 23.5 in favor of South Dakota. And as we know, we played it within 10. Not impressed with South Dakota. I don't.
Are you not impressed? Are you not impressed with South Dakota, or did we, like we've been saying, played maybe one of our best games of the year, and we're getting better as an inexperienced team? I mean, we'll find out about them. Where do they play the Jackrabbits? Where do they play them?
Yeah, a little bit of both.
Brookings.
I mean, wait till you get the North
It's in Brookings. Yeah.
Wait till you get the North, and you see the teams they beat. It's like, dude, North Dakota is pretty darn. Anyway, want to move that beyond? We good with South Dakota? Good with it? All right.
Yeah, we're good. Them Yotes.
Coyotes.
All right, real quick, I just wanted to recap the standings. North Dakota State is actually tied with South Dakota, number 1 at 4-0 in the conference. Missouri State's also 3-0. So between North Dakota State, South Dakota, and Missouri State, those 3 teams have not lost a conference game yet. North Dakota and South Dakota State, both 2-1. Illinois State being 2-2, and the rest really with a losing record. Indiana State and ourselves with 1 win, and then Northern Iowa, Southern Illinois, and Murray State all still looking for their first conference wins so far. just recap how the rest of the conference went and just talking about our picks. Dan and I had the most picks. I believe the difference was Dan took Murray State and I took North Dakota State, being the difference that put us ahead. And Dan and I picked the Penguins. That too. That was the difference. So now we are tied with Kurt, and Cyril's just 2 points trailing us on the overall season records. Just recapping, Northern Iowa was at North Dakota, who we have this weekend, blew them out of the water, 31-7, won and covered. Illinois State at Murray State. Illinois State wins but cannot cover, 40-32, interesting enough. Indiana State at Missouri State. Missouri State wins and just barely covers, 46-21. Penguins, as we all know, lose to South Dakota 27-17, but the Penguins beat the points on the cover. South Dakota State, North Dakota State, absolutely legendary game. The spread was 1.5, and South Dakota State was winning by exactly 2, what felt like the entire game to the last minute. North Dakota State takes the lead 13-9, and that's how it ends with the Bison winning a huge game, 13-9 over the Jackrabbits, and that was the week that was in the conference last week. Any comments on any of those? All right. Your Youngstown State Penguins have a crack at another Dakota school. This time, number 7, North Dakota, comes to the Ice Castle. It's going to be sunny, but 59 degrees at kickoff. And by 6:30, the sun's going to be down. And by 7, make sure your jackets are on. It will be another chilly night for a 6 p.m. kickoff. I like the 6 p.m. kickoff. I mean, we'll see how before I speak too soon, we'll see how this Saturday goes. But real quick, couple things on North Dakota and how they have fared thus far. Overall, they are 5-2. Their only losses are to Iowa State, which was the beginning of the year versus our very own John Haycock. They only lost 21-3. Then North Dakota State, 41-17. Other than that, just to rattle off their wins, they won versus Montana, Idaho State, San Diego, Murray State, Northern Iowa. Pretty decent resume. Left on their schedule, just so everyone knows, after the Penguins, they have Indiana State, South Dakota, and Illinois State. We'll definitely get into the Penguins game, but looking at the rest of their schedule, besides ourselves, South Dakota State may be the only team left on their schedule that I don't think they could win. That's going to leave them at a 3-loss season, unless we could take them down, being their 4th loss. And that's not bad, considering that the previous 2 years they were 7-5, both making the playoffs, both times getting knocked out in the first round to Big Sky teams. The difference is this year they put multiple Big Sky teams on their schedule and they beat them. So I think they are ready to take on the Big Sky this time. This is definitely a playoff-bound team. Again, number 7 in the country, coming to take on the Penguins. We did not play them last year. No play in 2023. We did lose to them 35-30 in 2022. Interesting game going back and forth. Their head coach has been there 10 years now. So he's been there a long time. He's a North Dakota native. He was a DB coach, a defensive coordinator there. Went to the Salukis and then was hired back in 2014 to be the head guy for North Dakota, and has really done great things with that program. Curdy, what do you think about the game overall? What should we keep our eye on? Any key players or key aspects of the game?
Yeah, I think their linebackers are going to be the strength of their team. Defensively, I think they're a really great team, giving up about 24 points a game. You guys know with the competition, Sal, you mentioned that they've played 24 is pretty good. Going back to Coach Kopp's 30-20 rule, They are scoring over, that 30 point threshold per game, and they're giving up about 24. This team really concerns me kind of for the reasons that we already talked about with South Dakota. One of the things that was probably the only promising thing in my eyes this past week was the way that we did control the ball and convert in the end zone. We're going to have to do that again if we're going to have a chance against these guys, right? I think Malachi McNeil is one of their good linebackers. Wyatt Pettigo is the other guy. But you go up and down this roster, and it's the common theme with these Dakota teams is these players are not transferring in for 1 year wonder type of things. These guys, as you go up and down the roster, if it says junior, it says they've been there for 3 seasons, right? Very, very rarely are you going to find a transfer that they need to plug and play. Their transfers, just like South Dakota State, are there to bring in competition. They played Iowa State really well, 21-3, and Iowa State, I don't know if they still are, but are they a top 10 team in all of college football to 21-3? Now, I know Iowa State's not known for their offense, okay? So if you can kind of get into a little bit of a game with them where you're going back and forth. North Dakota State, they went on the road, and that's a huge rivalry game for them. It was 24-10 at half, and then North Dakota had the ball to start the third quarter and fumbled in 3 plays. So then North Dakota State goes up. Next thing you know, it's 31-10 instead of being 24-17. 1 or 2 possessions in that game in Fargo, as I know personally, can completely change the complexion of how you go out there and try to win a big game like that. I think we have to control the clock, just like we did last week. If we do not control the clock, I don't know if we're good enough at making adjustments on both sides of the ball. I don't know offensively or defensively if we can contain them. But what we did the first 2 quarters of last week will allow us to have success. I do want to give Searle the shout out because Kreider made the play of the game last week. But as we're sitting here talking about it, if he doesn't make that play and South Dakota goes down and scores, we may be sitting here talking, dang, we lost 34-14. Now we lost a 3-score game against a team that a lot of our followers are saying is overrated. That's football, though. We know that. That's football. It comes down to possessions. It comes down to the way the ball rolls sometimes. And we need to take control of this football game from a time of possession standpoint. We need to get in the end zone. And if the ball is bouncing away from us and we're turning the ball over, this is going to be a tough battle because I agree with all of you. I think that this team, North Dakota, is better than the team that we just lost to by 10 points at home last week.
No doubt.
So yeah, we better come ready to play. And I agree with Coach Kopp. Like that's 100% on Coach Phillips and all of the coaching staff having those boys ready to play. And then I think that's where we start to speculate as a podcast and say, is it the players that we do not have that are we getting outplayed the rest of the game, or are we not making the adjustments? And that's where the entire Penguin Nation right now is speculating.
One more. Just I hate to go back to South Dakota, but before I flip it to Searle on these South Dakota game picks, I'm going to start calling them Las Vegas Mets. Mets had South Dakota winning 31-21. Wasn't quite right, but he had them winning by 10. He's not 10. Far. He's not far off. Yeah. And then I know, right? And then I want to call out a potential copyright infringement. Richard Wolf picked the Penguins 38-35. I want to say that Searle later went on to the South Dakota show. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he said 38-35. He said South Dakota loses the Penguins.
I thought about it. The next day. I was like, oh, man. I did. Well, shout out to Wolf, man.
Like give him his credit.
I'll give him his credit. You know, I was having a good time with those boys. I wanted to make them sweat a little bit.
Well, I think Mets reminds me of the Robert De Niro character in Casino. You know, he's a numbers guy. I think he's, with one of those CPA firms. He should probably go get a job out in Vegas and be one of those. Maybe he's one of them, like he's got that crazy mind, like he can pick numbers. So he's
got that Back to the Future notebook.
There you go.
That's Rain Man.
He just don't want
he's
you to know. So he's a
Rain
little
Man
off.
too. Yeah, he's Biff from Back to the Future.
Sal,
and
I'm glad, and
But
I think
still.
Metz is probably glad. I thought you were going to say Alan from The Hangover. I thought for sure you were going to say Alan from The Hangover, and I was like, that is not Metz. I'm standing up for him right now.
That's Tony, my cousin.
That's Tony.
Still, what are your back to North Dakota? Don't copy Wolf's score prediction if he's posted it, but what do you think about North Dakota, man?
I think someone should check on Wolf. I haven't seen him in the chat, so I'm hoping he's all right tonight. But anyways, just to jump on Kurt's last point, is it the players or is it the adjustments and the coaching? I think that's where, I don't want to point to any one direction. This is a team, and we all got to figure it out together. So, if the coaches are making adjustments and the players aren't, executing on that, that's one thing. If the coaches aren't adjusting and the players are, we don't know those things. So we can't really sit here and say, this is the problem. We got to view it as fans and not like we were in the locker room making adjustments. But this UND team, I looked at it. I'll give Sal more props publicly. I said that I could be swayed that South Dakota is the worst of the Dakota schools. I said that in our group chat, and to Sal's point, like, they are handling business on the road and on their schedule, and to South Dakota's point, they are too. But I think that this past Saturday, how we played, I think we might have exposed some flaws in their game. I definitely think that South Dakota State is going to be ready to get that monkey off their back. And shout out, did anyone see on Instagram like the close call on the catch by the South Dakota State guy that was not reviewed, where his heel was clearly in bounds, and they called him out of bounds on the catch, and they ended up losing that game 9-13.
ESPN too?
South Dakota State, yeah, and they ended up losing 9-13. The play wasn't reviewed, but on socials, it looks like he was in bounds. Regardless, back to our game. They do have 3 running backs that seem to be averaging around 50-plus yards a game. So they rotate them, keep them fresh. I don't know who's going to play if there's injuries. It looks like one guy's missed a game. The guy that gets the most attempts is number 28, Gavin Zybarth. I don't know how to say that, but look out for him. They do have a receiver. Their number one receiver, number 1, Bo Belquist, is their main target through the air. He's averaging just under 90 yards a game, but he does have a few games over 100, with 165 being the high versus Idaho State. This is a run-first team. They have 19 rushing scores to 9 passing scores. And their quarterback is Simon Romfo. He's a junior. He's completing around 57% of his throws. He only has a touchdown to interception ratio of 9-5. So 9 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. So, one of the keys to the game is, we got to stop the run. We got to be run focused. We got to get them in passing downs, because I think that is their weakness. Okay. I'm not saying they can't pass. I just think that is where they lack in this offense. I'm going to shout out the offensive line for UND, not something that I've done traditionally, because, when I am going for keys and key players of the game, it's very easy to go to the guys with stats. Offensive linemen don't get stats, but Jack Kuntz, their left guard, was just named Missouri Valley Player of the Week. And, they had this offensive line, and this offense had 75 plays to Northern Iowa's, I think, 45 or 44 plays, and definitely controlled the clock. They had 267 yards rushing. So we got to get aggressive with this offensive line and get in there and disrupt some stuff. So keep that fight up front. We gotta continue winning the turnover battle this week. So we won the turnover battle against South Dakota, so we gotta improve on that. Hopefully we get another strip sack. Maybe a pick. I think this kid might throw something up that we can go after and get.
I'm so glad you said that offensive lineman's name because I had him in my notes too, but I was only going to call him Jack because I was really nervous to pronounce his last name, if you know what I mean. But you did a great job on the pronunciation. I want to say something else.
Pronunciation.
Yeah. I really thought it was something else. I was like, I'll just call him
Come on,
offensive
man.
lineman
You called the
Jack.
Ice Castle the Ass Castle one show. Why don't you just pronounce this kid's name?
No. I'll leave that to you. But Dan, what are your thoughts on North Dakota, brother?
Dude, you got to give me a second after the ass castle was broke out. I mean, how am I even supposed to talk after that? Wow. That's legendary. I was interested. I read a little something about North Dakota. It's an interesting fact here. This is their first road game outside of the state of North Dakota in 8 weeks. So, man, maybe they'll get a little jet lag coming out here. They haven't traveled in 2 months that far. But like you guys said, our losses to them since they joined the conference were 0-2. They've been close, really close. And so, I think it's going to come down to that again, much like this past week. They have some balance. Kyle talked about they're a run-first team. I think they're a lot like us. I think both our programs are very similar. They're throwing for like 215 or something like that a game and rushing for 175-ish a game. So they're going to try and do it. And their time of possession, they're like 33 minutes a game. I think there's a lot of similarities between our teams. Sal mentioned their head coach, old Bubba Schweigert. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but he's been there, as Sal mentioned. This is his 11th season. So there's some consistency in that program with this guy. And I was looking at their roster, and I think someone can fact check me on this. 9 or 10 guys outside of their wheelhouse. Minnesota, Iowa, North Dakota, and like Oklahoma, Nebraska. That's it. Their rosters in that area, something that you guys know how I feel about those Dakota schools. I think they have a distinct advantage of their recruiting area, and their roster reflects it. These are the guys they go after. I saw where Jack, whatever his last name is, was the NBC Offensive Lineman of the Week. So he just looks like a Dakota boy. So they're going to try and do that, impose their will a little bit. I think they probably look at us and look what we're giving up per rush. So they're probably going to come out, run heavy. But, it's not a lot of flashy stuff with them. They don't beat themselves. There's not going to be a lot of penalties. And they're going to probably have I almost feel like they come out scripted offensively. Like, we're going to run these 9 plays no matter what. And then if we get different looks, maybe we have these 2 or 3 plays. I just feel like that's the kind of program they are. Their offense coordinator is going to, and their head coach, he's been there so long. Like, we script these first, 12 plays against Youngstown State, and we're running them no matter what, unless we come out and give them different looks. So I think they'll probably throw that in there. And my focus, or who I'm watching, is our interior defensive line. I think on the edge we've showed up, strip sacks, and we're getting sacks. Voidus has been playing well, and Hunter, all those guys, the guys Kyle mentioned as well. But I hope we can get some push. We're going to have to do that and maybe free up our linebackers a little bit. And can our front 7 put them in situations, make them go the long field and get some stops? Because we got stops last week against, that offensive line for South Dakota, not to go back. Did you see those guys? They're huge, like they always are. They're huge. And we got some stops. So it's going to take that for us this week, our interior D-line, to, as Kyle has said, we got to get hands on those guys. We got to disengage from blocks, and we got to get some movement from our D-line, the interior guys, and see what we can happen, free up those linebackers a little bit.
No doubt. And I don't have much to say, but I will say matchup-wise for our defense, of all the Dakotas, I like this Dakota team, the matchup best. Just real quick, if you look at the 4 Dakota schools and their offensive lines and how they run, North Dakota State, those guys look like they pull 5 linemen at one time for every run. Like, they're always pulling 3 and 4 guys, linemen, on every run. That's just how their offenses ran ever since we were in college. South Dakota State, Same offense we were in college, 12 personnel, always motioning that tight end, always in that pistol set. Same stuff. It's very in-your-face type deal. South Dakota, very pro style. We don't see any of those three offenses ever, except when we see them. North Dakota, they run an offense we're used to seeing. They look a lot like Illinois State, Southern Illinois, just that typical, we run it too, a typical spread college football offense that we're used to seeing. So I do really like our defense against this offense. However, North Dakota, rushing offense, number 17 in the country. I'm sorry, number 12 in the country. However, the Penguins, believe it or not, are number 17 in the country rushing offense. One thing to point out that is quietly happening and hasn't been mentioned on the show, look out, Bo Brungard, 600-plus rushing yards so far this year with a lot of games left. I don't know if we've ever had a 1,000-yard rushing quarterback at our school, but I think we got to look up the record because he has to be closing in. That's a lot of rushing yards for a quarterback. You look at the national rushing yards every week, Bo's the only quarterback on the list, which is incredible to see. But
we're talking about Sal. That's a good point. And he's only played 7 college football games, right? Or 8.
Nuts.
8 games. Yeah. This kid, this redshirt sophomore is doing those kind of things. So
Johnny Manziel 2.0.
But better.
Yeah. Except, he stays out of trouble. In other words, I like our defense a lot against this North Dakota team, much better than South Dakota last week. I do think they do rush the ball. Of course, if we can stop the rush like we did against South Dakota, we'll be in good hands. Real quick, Searle, score predictions in the YouTube chat. You have anything for me to jot down here?
Yeah, before we get into the score prediction, Metz is all over everything. I love having Metz in our corner, our back pocket.
What's he saying?
So UND does have a podcast. It is UND Football 360 or UND 360 Football, whatever the case may be.
Does that mean I got to watch my mouth?
No, it means you got to let it fly so we can get some more publicity on the show. Over the weekend, I don't know if it was over the weekend, but South Dakota offered an Ursuline kid, Philip Bowser, and he said, "Cop, have we ever lost a Valley kid to a Missouri Valley school?" So something to think about. And YSU did offer him. He does have an offer from YSU, but Metz is on top of the recruiting.
Well, that's a really good point. That means we've got to go out and start offering some kids from Iowa, South Dakota, North Dakota.
I mean,
we probably got to get some. Can we get some pheasants and some fields going with some animals out there where they can hunt with you, Kyle? Can we get?
Yeah, I mean, we'll figure it out.
We'll get a recruit out there. It goes every year.
Yeah, I mean.
And that was said on the point of Youngstown Original jumped in here with us. He says, we need to recruit differently. So I said, yes, we need to recruit differently. We need to recruit better. I made that point last week because we were not on the level of, South Dakota State and NDSU. And that is where we need to get to. We're not trying to beat South Dakota. We're not trying to beat Northern Iowa. We're trying to beat South Dakota State and North Dakota State. So that's where Metz jumped in and said, South Dakota offered one of Youngstown's own to come, and it looks like he's an offensive lineman. So
he is. He worked out at a gym where I used to go. He's a big old boy. He probably fits in their thing. I'm glad to hear we offered him as well, and we better not lose him to the Dakotas. I mean, I would hope we don't. Metz is. Did you say he's an Ursuline kid? I believe he is.
Ursuline, yeah.
Yeah, I think Metz has stock in Ursuline High School. I think they named a wing after him over there. So come on, Metz, let's recruit this guy, man. NIL, let's go.
Go grease his palms, Metz.
Yeah, man, come on, Metz. You got all that Vegas money. You've been pointing lines out.
Jumping into the score predictions. Nico has YSU winning 28-24. Jason has YSU winning 31-28. Metz, who's been really pessimistic all season, has YSU winning 28-24. So we got two 28-24s. Moss, get your score in, and we'll add it to the show here.
No doubt. Youngstown Original, I just said something very along the lines that Dan was just saying, and really Cyril was too. They're coming to get our boys. We need to go get their boys. Whoever they're recruiting, let's go recruit them too. And
I mean, especially if we're out there a couple times a year, like we're on the road, like go out there a day early and recruit on Thursday night. That's what they did to us.
And remember, guys, they don't have Akron, Kent, Bowling Green, Miami, OU, right? Who else am I missing?
They don't have any D1 guys.
They don't have any other schools to recruit against. So who knows? This kid we're talking about, Bowser, might have an offer from Kent as well. So, I mean, the Dakotas, I think they just have that advantage. I got to shut up about that. But, yeah.
Moss has North Dakota winning 31-17. So he's just trying to, get some points on the board here and get a win in the score prediction game here. He's not playing Homer this week.
I don't like the reason for that. Moss, come on, dude. Let's get into it. You guys ready for the picks?
Yeah, Sal, real quick, just because we talked about some records there. I looked up two things for us.
Go ahead.
Just want to talk about Jeff Ryan is currently the leading rusher quarterback all time for Youngstown State. 4 seasons, he had 1,871 yards. Wow. So for Bo kind of being on –
Wait, you said 1,800?
1,871 yards as a rushing quarterback through 4 seasons. Now, Bo played last year, so I'm sure his total is going to be there. But for already kind of being on a 1,000-yard pace this year, that would put Bo in a career already probably behind Keith Snoddy, who has 1,236 yards in the 70s. He's our 3rd leading quarterback rusher for his career. Bo would go ahead of probably Cliff Stout, who's right at about 1,000 yards in 4th. Ray Isaac would be 2nd. And then shout out Big Rick Davis with 803 yards through his career. So Bo with 1,000-yard season this season would already be top 3 or 4 in terms of career yardage. And I know he ran last year. Another record of note, the shortest game in college football the last 2 seasons was from a Division III school matchup. They finished the game in 2 hours and 57 minutes. So if we have 2 time of possession squads this weekend clashing, could we fight for the fastest college football game in the last 2 seasons? We would have to beat 2 hours and 57 minutes.
I love that. I love that little stat there. Yeah, that's little.
Bo had
Let's go for it. If we're gonna be 3-8 or whatever, like, come on.
Let's get the fastest game over with.
Then we'll do the fastest podcast right after it.
Yeah.
Bo had some big runs last year, so he's probably right up there with, what'd you call him? Rick Big Daddy?
Big Rick Davis.
He's probly pushing.
I wanted to say the other thing, but I'm going to keep it to Big Rick Davis because I don't mess up with things like Sal would.
I got you. So he's probably pushing that 800-yard mark. I bet he's pushing that 800-yard mark.
Oh, he's probably
Swicka jumped in. Yeah, Swicka jumped in with a UND pick, 38-24. So he's going with what were they? They used to be the Fighting Sioux, right?
Yeah. Why would you change your name? That was a badass name, the Fighting Sioux. That is badass, man. I mean, imagine what you could do with that deep. I know, we know why, but
they're getting woke up there in North Dakota.
We're still the Seminoles down here in Tallahassee.
That's because all them boys down there got some guts to stand up to the bullshit. But
now this might be some podcast after dark stuff, but
yeah,
how many more times?
Let's give the people what they want.
Hear this, but how many more times does somebody have to waddle on us before like one of our players goes over and hits them and we get a 15? You know what I mean?
Thank God.
Yes, Kurt, you can't be inciting violence.
I don't want to give any ideas.
We're gonna have,
but
Kurt, you're so right, man. Why do they do that to us? I don't get it. I never saw that when we played. Why do they do it every time?
Mitch started it. I swear Mitch did it against Ohio State.
Mitch started it at Ohio State.
Everyone's hit us.
And everyone decides to do it against us?
everyone.
Listen,
Yeah,
maybe
well,
the podcast, maybe we'll give a helmet sticker out for the first dude that goes and land
How do
sharks.
they not
Dude,
get
we'll
One
get-
of those
for it?
guys.
Yes, please.
There we go. We're giving out a man. We can't say this. Never mind.
But
Oh,
if you
first of
give
all,
a thought
we're
like a
getting
horns
into
down,
Bounty Gate. We're getting into
Bounty
Bounty
Gate,
Gate here. We're
Youngstown
getting into
Bounty.
we're getting into 1023. We're getting into 1023 committee stuff. Kurt's inciting violence on the field.
I have
on,
attorney. I got attorney Brian Kopp on the line. We're not inciting anything. Let's just
In
strike
Tampa.
that. Yeah.
There is no shirt. There is no shirt available.
if you
But,
do,
but we will
horns
give a
down-
helmet sticker for the first dude that land sharks a guy that does the waddle. I just said it. There we go.
If you do a
I'm
horns
fired.
down in Texas or at USF, you get a flag, a penalty for doing that after a touchdown.
Yeah.
You do the waddle, it's like they don't care. I don't understand it. It's
getting
not
You can write
unsportsmanlike.
a letter to the officials of the NCAA. I know Cop loves the NCAA. You got
Oh
No.
yeah, they're
I
the
like
greatest.
Your way, Kurt. Your way's a better way of handling it. But let's get into the picks, boys. Y'all ready?
Let's do it.
All right, as always, let's go. Myself, Kurt, Dan, then Cyril. Not only pick the spread winner, but tell us who you think is going to win the game. And just one hot take for the listeners. If you gamble, I think I did the Hard Rock, and y'all saw I won a good amount of money. The spread is very tough, but this year the conference, for the most part, is very like we said, there's a couple teams and everybody else. So just pick the winner. Like, you know who the winner is going to be. Don't pick the spread. Just pick the winner flat and do a parlay with the whole conference, not including the Penguins, because there are a lot of emotional decisions made with the Penguins. Leave the Penguins out. Pick the rest of the conference in a parlay, and you're going to win. You're going to win. Anyway, first game, Southern Illinois is at Indiana State, 1 p.m. Southern Illinois is a minus 17.5 favorite. This is an example I'm using. We all know the Salukis are going to win that game, but I don't think they cover. I think the Salukis are not the Salukis of old. I have Indiana State on the points.
Yeah, I'm going to do that same thing, Sal. Good points.
Southern Illinois wins, and I got them winning like 24-3. So
Give me. Oh my God! This is just, they're just poop
Like
sausage.
it's a huge surprise.
he just said poop
Oh my
sausage.
God.
Wait, can I chime in real quick? I just got a text from a fan asking if she can do the waddle, but she's pregnant. So does that, we got fans we got pregnant wives hitting us up
They're
on the
allowed
show
to
here.
waddle. No one's allowed to waddle after a touchdown
Okay.
except us.
Okay, Sledge.
Yeah,
What
Give
you
me-
got, Cyril?
Give me an Indiana State with the points. Let's ride
Okay.
on those Sycamores.
Yeah, first time I think I picked them since the toilet bowl. North Dakota State at Murray State, 2 p.m. North Dakota State, after coming off that big win, is a minus 34.5 favorite. I'm going with the Bison to win and cover.
Bison win and cover. And to note, I don't think that program has taken any steps back. Just to note, the Bison
They
have
got
not
better
taken
than
any
last
steps
year.
back.
They're better than last year with the new coach.
They're better than last year, but the program
Yes.
has not fallen off at all.
So to
Wait.
Kurt's point, Sal, freezing cold take was that the dynasty was over. So Sal,
It was until their
You're
coach
wrong.
left the USC. No, their coach left.
okay.
Wait. So the dynasty was over. Didn't they lose in the national championship last year or no?
No,
North Dakota State
Final
got
four,
beat.
I think.
Final Four. Okay.
by the Jacks, yeah.
By the Jacks. And now they're
They lost like 3 games in the regular season, uncharacteristically.
3 games. Man, that's all right.
Win and
Okay.
cover Bison.
Oh man, would you say that is 34.5?
Yeah,
That's
it's a lot of
for real?
points.
After a big win like that, man. Oof. Murray
It's Murray
State.
State, Dan. Quit
Yeah, I
acting like they're playing like, you know what I mean?
The
I know.
backups are going to drop 28 on Murray State.
They're
All
not
right.
playing the Kansas City Chiefs,
I know. I'm
Dan.
just saying
It's Murray State.
after a big game like that they were robbed, as Kyle pointed out, that there should have been a replay. Yeah, give me them damn Bison.
Oh man, the last time Murray State played a team from North Dakota, the score was 72-35. I think it's going to be 72-5. Give me the Bison.
Missouri State is at Northern Iowa, 5 p.m. The Missouri State is a minus 25.5. That's quite a huge spread. They'll definitely win comfortably, but I'm thinking they're winning by 24. Very tough to say because Northern Iowa's not good, but I have Northern Iowa in the points.
Yeah, I'll take that same thing, Sal. And Missouri State, 5th team from the conference that's going to make the playoffs.
Wow.
All Dakota schools and Missouri State is the 5th team in.
Yeah, only
Probably
3 Dakotas would be deserving.
You want to talk about doing some research. When was the last time Northern Iowa was getting 25.5 points at home?
Is that
Missouri State?
Has that ever happened? I'm willing to bet. I'm willing to bet Metz's stock in Ursuline High School that's never happened before. So I don't know what the hell to think about this. Is Northern Iowa that bad? Is it? I mean, talk about the dynasty over. Man, I tried to take Northern Iowa last week, and I think they messed me up. But there's got to be some pride there. Missouri State's going to win, but they can't cover that in the Uni Dome.
UNI is garbage this year. You have to be able to score points to cover spreads. And this team is struggling to score points. And I don't know what is going on over there. I don't watch Northern Iowa. I don't care about Northern Iowa. I hate Northern Iowa. I want to beat Northern Iowa's breaks off every time we play them. Give me Missouri State with the points.
Well said. North Dakota, as we spoke about, is at the Ice Castle, 6 p.m., playing the Youngstown State Penguins, and North Dakota is a minus 10.5 favorite. Boys, I really like this matchup, and again, North Dakota is very good. I'm not discrediting those boys whatsoever. However, I feel very good about this. This is going to be a one-score game. I'm taking the Penguins, obviously, not just to cover the points. I think this is the game this is a money line game. I know I said this last week, but I want the Penguins, and especially if Metz says it, that gives me a lot more confidence. Give me the Gwens.
Yeah, I'm riding with Switka this week. Switka said 38-24. I'm going to take that and make it 28-14 because I think there's not going to be enough possessions to do 38-24, but I still think it's going to be a 14-point spread. So UND win and cover.
Yeah, I had this preseason as a win for us, so I'm not veering from that. So I got Youngstown State winning this game, and it's going to come down to we're finally going to get a stop or we're going to get a field goal. This is going to be like a 21-17 type game or 20-17, but I got us in this game.
I expect last week to still hurt for these boys. I expect our team to continue to grow and get better and get aggressive. I expect us to score points in the second half. I expect us to be just as aggressive in the second half as we are in the first half on defense. I'm going with YSU 31-24.
Wow. 31-24. You know, Dan, I was just thinking if you and I were 100% correct on our Penguin picks, we would be 6-2 and not 2-6, which sounds a lot, but
Yeah.
this shows our bias.
Hey,
last game, South Dakota.
6-6 starts this week, and I had the Penguins 6-6 at the beginning of the season. So I need my boys to come through. We got to go 6-6, baby.
Strong words, Captain Insano again. South Dakota is at South Dakota State, 7:30. This game's on ESPNU, boys. And as Cyril mentioned, Rumor mill was game day. College game day was going to this game, assuming both teams won. Jackrabbits, as we mentioned, did not win. Game day is in Indiana, I believe. Good for those boys. But South Dakota at South Dakota State. South Dakota State is a minus 14.5 favorite. This game is going to be ugly. Jacks are going to run away with it. Give me the Jackrabbits to win and cover.
Jacks 42-10. They are mad, and I think South Dakota shows their true colors, which we all feel like they're not as good as their ranking is.
You're giving South Dakota 10 points. Wow, that's respectful.
Scoop and score or something like that,
Yeah, the Jackrabbits are going to be extremely salty out in Brookings. It's going to be like Hobo Day Part 2 out there. Jackrabbits, they put one on them. I don't know how many, but I don't know, maybe call it 34-3, 34-10, something like that.
Cyril?
Dude, the Jackrabbits got robbed last week. I'm telling you, boys, they got robbed. But they're not invincible. NDSU is a team that could beat them, and they did. I don't think South Dakota is as good as South Dakota State. I don't know what the score is going to be, but I will have South Dakota State at home covering that 14.5.
That Rob, all that means is when they rematch, it's going to have to be in Fargo more than less in the postseason if they don't play in Frisco anyway against each other. But any more thoughts on those games? Or when
yeah, I guarantee you, if they meet again, it will be in the national championship because, if the brackets were regionalized late, then SDSU and NDSU would always – right. So they would always meet in the semifinals, but they've met in the national championship game before. I believe for SDSU's first one. Was that the one? Anyways – I guarantee you those two teams will be on opposite ends of the bracket, and if they see each other again, it will be in Frisco.
If they both went out, yes. So if they're the 1 and 2 seeds, I agree. Last year that wasn't the case. I believe they're on the same side, but it's looking like they'll probably win out. You are right.
South Dakota State's ranked 3 after their one score loss. All of a sudden, Montana State is so much better than South Dakota State. That makes no sense. It was like the rankings people couldn't wait to put somebody else above South Dakota State for finally losing a game for the first time in 3 years.
We should do our own rankings. Like, how's North Dakota number 7? That makes no sense.
No sense.
So, to Elkin's point when he was on the show a few weeks ago, he did say there's a lot of people in the country that think Montana State is actually the number 1 team in the country. And last season, South Dakota State and Montana State played a really close game early. South Dakota State snuck it out. Montana State met NDSU in the playoffs to go to the semifinals and lost in overtime on a blocked extra point. So that Montana State program could very well be the deserving number 1 team. I just think that they gave the nod to NDSU because they beat the number 1 team and they were sitting at number 3.
I hate to be like the Monitors, but I just want to make sure I check because I know you confuse your Montanas and your Montana States.
Montana State.
Montana knocked out North Dakota State in the semifinals in overtime.
Fact check live by
Montana State. Montana State lost to NDSU. Montana State, who's sitting number 2, lost to NDSU in double overtime.
Yeah, you're correct. That's fine. All right. I just want to make sure you got your Montana's correct. All right.
I got my Montanas right.
All right. Let's transition. All right. Cheryl, I know the YouTube chat has been buzzing tonight. Anything else worth mentioning in that chat?
Kelly Howe jumped in here, said, I hope UND does not do the waddle, not needed at all. No waddle Wednesday. And then
I like
pretty
that.
much We talked about the recruiting aspect of it. We got the scores in. Moss is chiming in with his 2 cents on whatever. And Swicka says, was it Swicka?
Yeah.
Swicka's changing his pick because I got him hyped up. So he's
Swit,
taking the
I went with
Penguins
you,
this
big
week.
dog.
What's Wicca saying?
He just said he's changing his pick.
Okay.
Okay.
Kurt, I know Moss says your Instagram game has been terrible. Is that valid, or you have any Instagram?
Yeah, my wife had surgery, and I got to take care of the kids.
Oh man, hope everything's okay.
I'm about to give the
Andy's looking for a house.
Searle. I'm about to give it to Searle.
No, give it to Mets. Mets.
To someone else.
Okay.
I've been trying to figure out how to stop Moss in fantasy. That's what it is. I couldn't. I got the Jets defense giving me -5 points.
The Moss man. Moss man.
I got lost this
Dan,
weekend. I'll take one for you, Kurt.
Dan, any shout outs for anyone before we shut it down?
Yeah, I just want to mention the handful of guys in the NFL, just real quick. I've been meaning to do that, but our shows were.
Let's do it.
Kyle Smith, he's the assistant GM for the Washington Commanders, played wide receiver under Coach Aycock. That's unbelievable, man. We got a former Penguin assistant GM for the Commanders. Our guy who's been on the show, Donald Delicio, the Chiefs are rolling on defense. I know he's always watching the Penguins. Our other guy who's been on the show, Carm Brasillo, our guy Carmanucci, he's with the Giants, offensive line coach there. He comes home to Pittsburgh Monday night. They play the Steelers on Monday Night Football. And we all know Carm. He was with both Coach Wolford and Coach Pelini. Sean Baker, local guys with the Houston Texans as a defensive special teams assistant. He was under Coach Pelini. And then our guy, Andre Coleman, another one of our guys. Andre is with the Washington Commanders as well. He's an offensive assistant. He was a tight end coach under Coach Wolford here during the time that all of us were with the team. So those guys, it's amazing to have those guys, coaches, GM, all that stuff in the NFL, and they're all Penguins. So we got to give them guys some love.
Absolutely. Love that. Love that. Just 2 more points before we wrap it up. Real quick on the Vanderbilt tracker, another what Cheryl calls a microwave take. You want to know that Vanderbilt is ranked number 25. Just remember, after week 1, I said they'd be pretty good. And what was my other take? 4 years ago, I wish I could tell Kyle Searle one day Baker Mayfield is going to be starting for the Bucs, kicking butt, while Jameis Winston's going to be starting for the Cleveland Browns. Give me a break. Good luck to you, sir. Anything else before we shut it down?
No, I just, as a Steeler fan, I'm not sure what the hell you even mentioned that for. I mean, what is that? What are we talking about Baker for? Why are we doing?
He's the best He's the best quarterback the Bucs ever had.
Oh my God! Did you guys just hear that?
Let me shut it down. Let me shut it.
Kurt, please put that on Instagram. But man,
we good? Everyone ready to shut it down?
Lock it up.
All right. Real quick, again, your Youngstown State Penguins host number 7 North Dakota, 6 p.m. this Saturday on ESPN Plus or your local Youngstown network to catch the game. We are, again, on YouTube Live every Wednesday, 7:30. You can follow us anywhere podcasts are available. Please give us a 5-star review and share it with a friend. Please follow us on Instagram. If I can find my Instagram note. There it is. Instagram, Whitetown Penguin Podcast. Please send in your questions or comments you may have for the show, and we will read those out loud. But once again, this is the Youngstown Penguin Football Podcast. I'm your host, Sal Guardo. That's Kyle Sorrell. That's Dan Kopp. That's Kurt Hest. And as always, go Penguins. Man,